why do we need state and federal rights laws?
Australia is a federation of states, and so some laws are made by our federal government, and the federal government has particular responsibilities, and the states and territories have different responsibilities. So some of the rights that we have under international law, the human rights, fall within the responsibilities of the states, and some are clearly federal rights or federal laws. So, for example, rights in relation to citizenship, things like the right to be a citizen, so everybody has that right of citizenship, is clearly a responsibility of our federal government, as is dealing with one of the other rights, which is the right to seek asylum. So if somebody is escaping from a place of conflict, they have a right to seek asylum under international law. And it is our federal government that's responsible for who can come into the country. So to that extent, our federal government needs to set up a rights framework that encompasses those things that are federal rights or federal law responsibilities. The states are different. The states have, I guess, a much broader set of responsibilities, and they include most of our courts and tribunals are set up under state law. Our schools are largely a responsibility of our states. Our health systems are state responsibilities. Our industrial rights, so our rights in relation to work and safety at work, are generally state obligations. Because of that, we need our states to also have laws that set out and protect our rights. And a good example of this sort of mix of jurisdictions is that in relation to discrimination law, we have a set of federal discrimination laws that apply to everybody in Australia. And then we have state and territory discrimination laws that apply just to people in those states or territories. And we have both, and they work together. In that way, Australia is like Canada, which is also what I would say a federation. It's not quite the right word. So we're like Canada because we have a number of jurisdictions that work together to create the nation. Whereas in a place like New Zealand, it's a single jurisdiction, and so they only have a single Human Rights Act that covers everybody in that country. So it does make it more complicated that we're a federation, and it is important that we have recognition and protection of rights at both the federal level and the state and territory level. Without that, there'd be gaps in protections of those fundamental human rights. Another aspect of why we need state and territory recognition of rights in particular, but also federal recognition, is that there's often a reluctance, and we've seen that reluctance from our federal government over the decades, a reluctance to enact the protections of human rights that we need. And that has left a vacuum in Australia of protection of rights. And the states and territory that have human rights protections have stepped into that vacuum and had the political will to enact laws that protect people in their states and territory. For those of us who are outside of those states and territories, I guess we really wish that our political leaders had that courage and that willingness to do what they've promised to do internationally. And there continues to be campaigning across the country, both for a federal human rights law, but also in the rest of the states and territories that don't have one, for the state or territory to enact that protection.